one of my key messages is that not all subsidies are alike, and that it's important to understand distinctions across perhaps no fewer than 7 different types of farm subsidies. And for each of these, there's a different thing that we can pay attention to for what is it that the government does under this policy, and what is the effect on producers and on consumers, and what is the effect on the amount of food of particular types that's produced and sold. So some of these policies increase the farm price. Some of them suppress the farm price. Some of them increase the consumer price or suppress consumer price. Some of them make the quantity that's consumed bigger or smaller. And so we have to think, bear with me while we think through a couple of these in turn. Let's start with traditional price supports. If you ask farmers, what do they want to happen to prices? And then you remember the journalists tell us that the US has a cheap food policy. Ask a farmer what is their opinion about a cheap food policy. No, they want prices to be higher. And farmers are an important constituency behind US agricultural policy. So it's not surprising that some of these farm subsidy mechanisms have the goal of raising the farm price, not making food cheap. And the price supports are one of them. The government offers, if the market price falls below a certain target, the government will buy up a certain amount of commodity and hold it off the market. Because there's problems with each of these subsidies, policymakers find themselves turning to the next one. And so it's a little like being lost in a maze looking for an exit where there isn't an exit, where none of the policies really make all the stakeholders happy. But one of them that's been used over the years is to limit the supply. If you could only limit the supply, then the government wouldn't have to buy up billions of bushels. You could have the higher price without the trouble of storing the commodity. And this was used in the form of quotas over the years, also from about the 1930s to the start of the 1970s. A little bit later for peanuts and sugar and a couple other commodities. But it's still with us to some extent in the form of some of the conservation programs, which have a softer version of these supply controls, like conservation programs that voluntarily farmers get paid to set aside land and keep it out of production. The deficiency payments are the type of farm subsidy that suppresses the consumer price. And so these price suppressing farm subsidies are the ones where you might most worry for nutrition. You might worry that this is making unhealthy food cheaper for consumers and is causing consumers to eat more. Okay, because of shortcomings in those subsidies, there have been a variety of more contemporary farm subsidies. This includes crop insurance. It includes decoupled farm subsidies, where the decoupling means that your farm subsidy is not based on how much you produce this year. This is the key principle that either environmentalists or our trading partners want from US farm subsidy, is they don't want our subsidies to be based on this year's output, because that's the pattern that incentivizes farmers to overproduce, which causes either nutrition or environmental or trade consequences. And so each of these is, it's not really fully decoupled, but close enough on the books to being decoupled that everybody kind of accepts them as being decoupled for policy purposes. Finally, we come to the interventions in the farm economy that are designed to increase demand. These stand out to me more than they do in the standard presentation on this topic. If you can see how all the trouble with all these farm subsidies would go away if only buyers just wanted more food in the first place. It's almost the only of these subsidies that increases the price and increases the quantity at the same time. So you can see how this picture of shifting the demand function outward is what a farmer would really dream of.